I used to live a simple and peaceful life, looking for simplicity in everything. I would spend my days at school, walking aimlessly back and forth in the hallway, searching for just a single friend to fill the huge void in my heart and be like a sister to me. I would follow the girls around and try to get close to them, hoping to find a loyal friend. One day, as usual, I was sitting on the stage bench, staring into space and lost in another world. Suddenly, a girl named Alice came up behind me and grabbed me out of nowhere. Honestly, she startled me so much that I jumped in fright. I turned around, shocked and surprised, only to see her looking at me with excited eyes as she said, "Come with me." I was stunned, and right away, without giving me a chance to think, she ran down the stairs while happily saying, "Come on, let's go." At first I told myself, what an annoying girl. But day by day I felt like she was the only one who could fill this emptiness that inhabited my soul. We started getting closer and closer, my heart started beating with love and sisterly affection for her, and I began praying for her well-being in every single prayer, while she shared the exact same feelings with me, and even more. I wanted with all my heart to thank her in a way that would do her justice and make her happy, so I prepared a crazy surprise for her birthday on the 4th of April 2015. That day I arrived at the classroom before everyone else, shaking with excitement and waiting for her with bated breath. As soon as she opened the door, I let out a trilling cheer in her direction, surprised her, and handed her a gorgeous bouquet of flowers along with the cards she had always looked at pictures of and wished for ages. She thanked me in a heartwarming way and hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the sincerity of her feelings. But at the same time, there was a clique in the classroom, making a fuss, with everyone swarming around one girl who was their leader, named Samar. The girls practically worshipped her like a queen, even though from a single look, I knew she was probably malicious and the worst person you could possibly meet in this era. And after all that surprise and beauty, things suddenly started changing without any warning. Alice slowly began getting close to Samar and her clique, eventually becoming one of them. At first, I told myself it was fine, let her be friends with everyone, it didn't really matter to me. But day by day, Alice started drifting away from me and changing. Her looks became cold, and her messages grew fewer. I waited for a whole week, until I simply couldn't take it anymore. I went up to her and asked, "Alice, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this and pulling away?" She replied with a harsh face and a tone I never expected from her at all. "Mind your own business, don't meddle in my life." That's when the ultimate disaster began. This clique wasn't content with just taking Alice away. They started bullying me, making up stories and rumors about me that I never did, nor even crossed my mind. Everyone in the class believed them and started hating me and glaring at me coldly, and even Alice, the one I considered my soul, joined them and turned against me with utter cruelty. One day during PE class, I was sitting alone in a corner on the ground, the whole world feeling too tight for me. Suddenly, Alice approached me, stood right over my head with absolute coldness and said, "Our friendship is over, and go pick a fight somewhere far away from me." Right then, I felt like my heart was going to explode from sheer heartbreak. Sure, I was expecting this moment and knew it was coming, but when it finally arrived, it felt heavier than a mountain pressing on my chest. My attachment to her was abnormal, and it was the shock of my life. I spent 2 nights unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling and crying until my eyes grew sore, my eyelids only tasting sleep for a few short hours out of sheer exhaustion and pain. From that moment on, gloom and a heavy heart gripped me, until the vacation finally arrived. Ah, at last. I had so much fun, joy, and laughter like I had never felt before, feeling as though I had broken free from their nightmare. But the fun didn't last long. When the new school year started, and I entered the 8th grade, 2nd intermediate, that was the true disaster and carnage. From the very first day, all eyes were on me. The students glared at me and whispered among themselves while I tried to brush it off, act like I didn't care, and make new friends with other girls. Indeed, I started adapting and blending in with them, and suddenly, the thing I never accounted for happened. Alice walked over with utter arrogance, stood right in front of me in front of the new girls, and said in a loud, provocative voice meant to humiliate and disgrace me in front of them, "These tricks of yours won't work on us, and I came to tell you face to face. Our relationship is over forever, and don't ever let me see your face crossing my path again, you loser." At that moment, I felt like I lost my mind, and the devil took over, and before I even realized what I was doing, I leaped at her in a crazy tackle. I grabbed her hair with all the bitterness inside me and dragged her to the ground as she screamed and pulled my hair, and we started tearing at each other and fighting amidst the screams and the circle of students forming around us. The girls were screaming and desks were shifting, until the teacher rushed in shouting and pulled us apart by force, while our hands were still tangled in each other's hair. She grabbed us by our hands and hauled us straight to the administration office. In the office, I received a terrifying scolding and reprimand from the principal and the counselor, while Alice played the victim and wept crocodile tears. They demanded that my mother be called immediately. And when my mother learned about what happened and saw the disciplinary warning, out of extreme protectiveness and intense frustration with me, she gave the administration and teachers full authorization and said right in front of me, "Discipline her, and I am right there with you." And when we got back home, I received a beating, punishment, and thrashing from my mother that I will never forget for the rest of my life. The nightmare didn't end there. A few days later, I was late for morning assembly, and when I arrived, the teacher caught me during recess. She wouldn't let me go out with the girls or see the sun. She took me to the janitor's storage room all by ourselves, set up a chair, and made me sit next to her. She kept staring at me with terrifying looks, locked the door with a key, and began beating and striking me ruthlessly with her palm and a wooden ruler, driven by malice and resentment because my mother had given her the green light and full authority to do whatever she wanted. I sat in the darkness, bruised and in pain of all shapes and colors. No friend was looking for me during recess, and no one had any idea about the torture and injustice I was enduring between those locked walls. And instead of this nightmare ending, it went from bad to worse, and the heartbreak doubled. One day, without any prior warning or a valid reason, the principal called me in and suddenly pinned a false accusation on me when I had nothing to do with any of it. She grabbed my hand with harshness and roughness and walked me down the deserted hallway until we reached the old storage room locked at the very end of the school. As soon as we stepped inside, she locked the door with a key, and before I knew it, she unleashed all her hidden malice and bitterness upon me. She grabbed my hair with all her might, dragged me to the ground, and began beating me with punches and extreme cruelty all over my body, a wild, insane beating, while I screamed and begged her, with no one around to hear me. I walked out of that room with my body aching as if I had just survived a battle or a car accident. Purple and blue bruises covered my skin, and the marks of the blows were stamped on every corner of my body. And the worst part? The teachers and administration completely singled me out. Anything that happened at school, even something minor, trivial, or another girl's mistake in class, the blame, the beatings, the verbal abuse, and the torment would always fall entirely on me. They never left me alone, lying in wait for me over the smallest detail, and every single day brought new suffering, beatings, and insults without a shred of mercy or humanity. With all this continuous injustice and overwhelming pain I experienced, my psyche shattered and hit absolute rock bottom, turning into a total wreck beyond imagination. I went completely numb inside, sinking into a deep, severe state of depression. My desire for life and everything around me vanished. I spent my days in a suffocating silence, staring into space with a broken spirit, carrying a heavy burden and unhealed wounds in my heart, while a deep sorrow slowly consumed my soul day after day, without finding a single hand reaching out to comfort or soothe my wounded heart. I went completely numb inside, sinking into a deep, severe state of depression. Years passed, and I tried to bury all the pain I had lived through, until the day that completely changed my life arrived. It was a very ordinary day, or so I thought. I was sitting with my mother at home, chatting and laughing about simple things, when suddenly we heard the front door burst open forcefully. We turned around quickly, and there was our neighbor standing at the doorway, her facial expressions bizarre in a way I had never seen before. For a moment, we froze in shock, and before we could even understand what was happening, an unforgettable tragedy unfolded right before my eyes. A few moments later, the neighbor fled the scene, leaving me standing there completely unable to comprehend what had just happened. I ran to my mother, screaming, "Mom! Mom, don't leave me!" My mother was in my arms, and I tried to stay strong despite the fear and shock. I called out to her and cried as she tried to open her eyes and speak. She motioned for me to come closer, so I pressed my ear to her lips while weeping. She began whispering in a weak voice, "Forgive me, my daughter." I shook my head through my tears. "Don't say that, Mom, please don't." But she continued, trying to steady herself. "Forgive me if I ever fell short with you. If I ever made you feel like you were alone. You are the most precious thing I have." At that moment, I broke down completely. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. I hugged her while crying from heartbreak and fear, wishing I could turn back time and prevent all of this from ever happening. That day became the turning point of my life. I grew up carrying a single question burning in my heart. Why did this happen? And who was behind it? Years passed, and I resolved never to let the case rest. I studied hard, put in the effort, and joined the police force, with my sole mission being to uncover the truth. Once I became a police officer, I reopened the case file from scratch. We began reviewing the evidence and hunting for any thread that could lead us to the truth. The investigation was long and grueling, but I refused to give up. And after a long search, we finally tracked down the neighbor. We found her location and began interrogating her anew. At first, she denied everything, but as time went on, new evidence emerged revealing that someone had paid her a massive sum of money to carry out what happened. Yet, the biggest shock of all was that even she didn't know the identity of the real person. She stated that she received the instructions through indirect means, and that she never clearly saw the person pulling the strings behind the scenes. We kept digging deeper and deeper, but every single path led to the exact same dead end. An unknown person, someone who orchestrated everything from afar and vanished, leaving behind nothing but a sea of unanswered questions. I stood before the case file, thinking to myself, if we never find out who it was, does that mean the story is over? Yet something deep inside my soul whispered, the truth never dies. It might be delayed, but it always comes to light. And from that day forward, I forged a brand new purpose, not just to seek justice for my mother, but for every single person who has ever been wronged and left without anyone to defend them.